We know from medieval records that kings, either with their entourage or without it, managed a whole range of different distances in a day's travel on horseback. In January 1300, a 60-year-old Edward I, complete with his whole court, managed to travel an average of 19 miles a day. Now, that's in the winter, and remember, in January there's only 9 hours roughly of daylight, and allowing for 2 hours of rest stops and meals doesn't give him that long to travel that distance. I wonder how fast he was going. Let's do some experiments and find out. It's an incredibly blustery day here, but it's still fine enough to do some research. So I'm going to put one of these stakes here in the beginning, and then I'm going to walk out at a sensible speed the half mile that I've measured on an aerial map. Now, obviously a lot of these measurements and these timings are going to be necessarily averaged out and probably a bit rough, but I think it gives a good indication of the kind of speed that King Edward III must have been travelling at. So there's the start point, and I'm going to walk the half mile down that way, not at any particular speed, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to try it again several times. So I am going to set off in a straight line all the way to that long distant line of trees and time it just at an ordinary walk. It's half a mile according to my satellite view, and we'll see. Here we go. Walk on. Good boy. 46 seconds. (11 minutes 30 seconds). Walking. Good boy. Good lad. (12 minutes). Stop. 12 minutes 44 seconds to go there and back. Actually, that wasn't very difficult. That's just a casual, comfortable rate of walking on a horse. You could probably do that in reasonably suboptimal conditions, and I don't think at the end of the day you'd be particularly tired. That's a sort of nice, comfortable pottering along through the landscape, enjoying it and not rushing. So 19 miles in a day is relatively easy to do if you're mounted. But what if the king was in a state of national emergency and needed to travel really quickly from one place to the other? How fast could he actually travel in medieval times? In complete contrast to Edward I's more casual ride across the country, a younger Edward III in 1336 in September, so sort of the beginning of winter, travelled 380 miles in a maximum of 7 days. So by my calculations, that's roughly 55 miles a day. He wasn't encumbered with his court. He was travelling with a small retinue and he was trying to go quickly. How fast would you have to actually ride to achieve that kind of distance? 55 miles in a day is a lot more than 19 miles in a day. Now, We don't know how many hours in the day he rode for, but it's obviously got to be a reasonable length of time because it's remarkable, because it's written down. So the question I'm asking is, what speed do you have to go on horseback to cover 55 miles a day for several days? I think it's going to be reasonably fast, but it's definitely not a canter or a gallop, because a horse will be blown after a short while doing that. It's going to have to be a walk and a trot. Now, of course, medieval horses did other paces like ambling and pacing, but I don't have an ambler or a pacer in my yard, so we're going to have to rely on Warlord here, and we're going to see how long it takes me to cover half a mile at the speed I think you have to maintain for probably 8 to 10 hours in a day to travel 55 miles. Come on, steady now. Now walk. Good boy. I've got to get halfway in about another 15 seconds. Trotting. Good boy. That was very brisk indeed. That was a bit of trotting, a bit of walking, but doing that for 10 hours in the day would be extremely tiring. 9 minutes 53 seconds. Warlord is raring to go because he's been pushed on. Of course, he wouldn't have this much energy after 55 miles of this. So 9 minutes 52, near enough, 9 minutes 53 seconds. That is the sort of speed he would have needed to maintain to cover 55 miles in one day. That's pretty rapid riding. That was actually very interesting. I had to push Warlord on quite rapidly. I had to kind of make the time work. I had to walk briskly, but also trot and a bit of jig jogging along the way. So I felt like I was rushing the whole time. Yes, I was trying to hit a specific timeline for a specific journey, but if you were pushing on, if you were Edward III and you were rushing to travel a distance across England, you would have needed to push on. So somebody would have been driving that small group of men and horses as they rode through the landscape, because you'd have to keep going, you have to keep jig jogging, you have to keep pushing on. You rest for a little bit by walking briskly, and then you go, right everybody, let's trot for 5 minutes, now back down into a walk. So it's not an easy or comfortable pace to maintain, and doing it for 7 days days in a row, possibly even faster. We don't really know exactly how much he would have travelled each day. It would have required quite a lot of discipline, and I imagine there were more than a few sore bodies at the end of each day.